What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to an exciting episode of the Smart HVAC Marketing Podcast, part 2 of our exclusive partner series with our friends over at Schedule Engine. I don't know about you all, but here in Virginia Beach, it is 86 degrees outside. Thank the Lord. It is getting warm, which means people are going to start using those air conditioners for extended amounts of time. Maybe they'll stop working so much, which means shoulder season is coming to an end pretty quickly, and we are going to be getting busy soon, hopefully sooner rather than later. So in this episode, we are going to chat with Alyssa over at Schedule Engine about how to manage your team during that busy peak season. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Smart HVAC Marketing Podcast, the podcast for HVAC contractors who are ready to quit screwing around and begin growing their business. Powered by Rival Digital. On this show, you'll hear from industry leaders and become equipped with the tools and knowledge you need to build a world-class business. Now, here's your host, Eric Thomas.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. Eric Thomas here from Rival Digital. Super excited for this episode. Alyssa, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Eric. I will say I'm a little bit envious that it's 85 degrees where you're at because it's 70 and rainy in Chicago. So, well, there's sun in the back. It's not exactly ideal outside. So,
yeah, 70 is still better than it was the other day. I was there last week just catching a connection flight and it was snowing. So that's a slight improvement.
It sounds pretty on brand, though, for Chicago in April, I will say. So, teases you back and forth with a little bit of snow and a little bit of sunshine and then just outright downpour. So never know what you're going to get.
Yeah. Well, I know a lot of our listeners out there would probably agree when we say that we are ready for this weather to finally break, this roller coaster tendency that we've been having lately of a warm day and then 3 cold days and then a warm day and then 3 cold days. We're looking for those all warm days to hit back to back to back and get busy. So for those who haven't already listened to part 1 of this partner series, we chatted about strategies for staying busy during the shoulder season. Hopefully shoulder season is coming to an end, and now we're heading into the peak busy season as summer approaches. So today we're going to talk about how you can manage your team properly during that busy season, that demand season. So Alyssa's already been on the show. This is part 2, I guess, of Alyssa's featured on this podcast. So welcome back to the show, Alyssa. Why don't you go ahead and give our listeners another brief introduction in case they missed the first part?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, very happy to be back. So as always, thank you for having us. I have been with Schedule Engine for about 3 years. Previously, I was on the sales side, and more recently, I transitioned to managing our strategic partnerships. So working really closely with teams like yourself to make sure that all that traffic that you guys are driving can be converted for each and every one of our contractors. So knowing the needs for each contractor are different based on the times of the year and kind of those overall goals, really making sure that you guys have the support you need and we can ensure mutual success for our clients. So happy to be back. And I don't know if we're going to say we're back in the rival room or what we're calling this now, but I feel like you passed the 100th episode. So we got to think of something sooner or later.
Yeah. Yeah. And for those, okay, this is actually something we were talking about the other day when we were prepping for this. It's come to my attention that some of our listeners don't know that this podcast is hosted by Rival Digital. So if you're listening to this out there, yes, I'm proud to put this podcast out for you for free. Hopefully you get a lot of good content out of it, but also don't forget, and in case you didn't already know, hey, we are a marketing agency. We help contractors just like yourself with your digital marketing. So fun fact, this podcast is actually not what I do for a living.
As much as you wish it was, you do have a day job.
Yeah, I do have a day job. This is strictly just to offer value to the marketplace. So yeah, fun fact. I guess I'm gonna have to start saying that at the beginning of each episode. So Alyssa, let's dive right in.
Let's do it.
Busy season is exciting. It's also can be, it can also be a little scary sometimes. What are some things that you see or would recommend to some of your contractors who are trying to gear up for the busy season, staff up for the busy season, and prepare themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. So I hear quite a few things. Most common is from where I sit, you have to have a plan. We all know that when I guess you could say, extreme weather hits, or when it is busy season and contractors are booked to the max day in and day out, there's emergencies thrown on their board, their technicians are working long days. It's really important for every team to have a plan. So knowing who is covering what they're covering, when they're covering it, making sure everybody has those breaks in between. It's really important to go into those busy seasons with a plan, because inevitably, if you don't, then it leaves those gaps for missed opportunities, opportunities on the board to maybe not be capitalized on. And I think at a base level, it gives everybody a sense of knowing what it is that they have to do and what they're in charge of when they walk into their days. So
Yeah.
making sure everybody is prepared and has a plan, and everybody's on the same plan nonetheless. If not everybody knows the goals, not everybody knows the objectives of the day, then doesn't really set the teams up for success. And I would say the second piece of that is really also preparing your teams in a way that gives them the tools they need to succeed. So we can have a plan in place to say, hey, here's our goals. Here's what we want to do when we run into XYZ situations during busy season. Making sure that those members of your team have the proper resources and the proper tools to lean on. So whether that is enabling different tools that take that call volume off, or allowing customers other avenues to engage with you all. At the end of the day, we really want to make sure that your team is supported, because that's what's getting you through busy season. And if your teams are run down, then that's not good for anybody, your team and your customers alike. So I would say the plan is first and foremost, but then also making sure that pieces within that plan, you have kind of that outlined objective for each party, and they have those resources to lean on when they need to.
Yeah. This is an analogy that came to mind when you were talking about having a plan. And I know Will Smith is a hot topic right now. I'll probably get smacked for just mentioning this. But I don't know if anyone out there has seen the movie King Richard, which came out. Liz, have you seen it? This
I
newest
haven't, but
film?
it popped up on a flight that I was on the other day, and I almost clicked
Yeah.
it. And then, of course,
So
my airline Wi-Fi didn't work, so I'll blame them.
so yeah, that's actually how I saw it. I was on a flight and watched King Richard, starring Will Smith. And the story's about Venus and Serena Williams. Everyone knows them, easily the best tennis players of all time, female tennis players of all time. And just an incredible story about having a plan. Pretty much, apparently, Venus and Serena's father created a plan for their life before they were even born, for them to become the most dominant, tennis players to ever walk this earth. And that's pretty crazy. And when they would practice, they would hang up these signs that say, like, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And that's
Mhm.
totally true in the contracting world and in business in general. But the story goes on. So, like, he's got this plan for them. He's got a plan to train them and to coach them and do all this stuff and put them in the right place to become, dominant athletes. But he didn't have the tools in place because their upbringing was in Compton, and there were, they had, they didn't have the resources that they needed. So he had to go out, Will Smith being King Richard at this point, had to go out and find the coaching, had to find, world-class coaches that were going to help them fulfill this plan that he created for their life. I'm not going to tell you guys any more of the story because I want you to go watch it. But it's a good movie, and that really, it's so true in business as well. Like, you can have a plan. I could plan to make $100 gazillion, but and we can come up with steps to how to achieve that. But we got to have the tools in place so that we can hit that plan. But yeah, I think having a plan in place is huge, because if you have a plan, you at least have something to fall back on. Like, if because we all know when it gets busy,
Yeah.
the phone's ringing off the hook, everyone's going crazy, and it's like you're putting out fires and doing all this stuff. But that plan is what holds it together.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you kind of mentioned it too. I would even say, like, thinking of the parts of the business that each kind of have to have their own plan. So, you said the phones are ringing off the hooks. Great. Well, okay, what happens then when every CSR is on the phone? Like, what is now happening to those customers that are still calling in? Who are they getting directed to? What is that experience like on the other end of that phone conversation that your CSR is maybe not able to have one-on-one? That could be a very different plan than when you say, okay, we have a full board, and now we had two no AC units come in, 10 plus years old, our board is full. What is the plan with those? What are we now doing when these come in, and how are we shifting stuff around? So I think kind of that overarching plan is super important, but also thinking kind of within those buckets. The plan for your CSRs could be different than for your dispatchers, which could be different for your technicians. And knowing that they're each encountering different scenarios in busy season that differ from one another. That technician may walk in the job and say, great, I'm going to be here 2 hours longer than I thought. And that CSR has them booked back to back to back all day. So when those scenarios happen, one, what are we doing? But then two, what is each party responsible for? So I think within each of those kind of buckets, it's also super key to think about what that kind of looks like for the person that is in that role, because it can look really different across the organization.
Yeah. And we all know, like, when the air goes out in the summertime in your home or your apartment or your condo, wherever you're at, it's not fun to be sitting in a hot home. And so, that customer may think that they're the most important person walking the earth at that time, because to them they are. So what would you recommend for contractors who are trying to find ways to, like, creatively find ways to create capacity within their team when all their technicians are running back to back calls?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that is really where the human touch comes into it. We obviously, what we do, we can help automate things, help take some of that pressure off, but having some of those other tools and those resources in place for your team to use that can automate some of that more tactical kind of transactional experiences, then gives your team time back in their day to make that phone call to Miss Johnson that says, hey, we know your AC is out right now. This is the situation we are in. And it allows them to provide that context versus this customer sitting in their home with no AC, their technician's an hour and a half late, they haven't got a call, they don't know if someone's coming. So I think it really is pairing kind of those resources and tools you're enabling for your teams to take some of that more transactional, kind of tactical, high level interactions off their plate to allow them to focus on those. We know technician shortages are a huge thing, and that's not something that's going to change overnight. So always making sure that they're walking in, focusing on those highest value tickets at the start of the day, knowing that those are likely the top priority, not only for them, but for those customers, and working their way back. So I know most contractors right now are probably wrapping up their maintenances, but making sure those maintenances are in before, X date, so that when these no heats, no cools, and these kind of larger tickets in busy season start to roll in, you're not now having to still fit in maintenances and kind of shift around those schedules day to day. So again, that plan even prior to busy season, how are we going to knock out all of the shoulder season stuff? What's our target date to try to do that? So when this weather gets kind of how it is now and people might be freaking out a bit or stuff might start to break, you guys have that capacity because there's not a backlog of stuff that you're just waiting, trying to slot in. So
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, I feel like shoulder seasons, the mindset tries to be a little bit more quantity over quality, because it's like, there's just not a huge demand
yeah,
for a lot of different things, and it's like, all right, let's get all our maintenance in now. Let's just run maintenance calls as much as we can. Of course, you're going to get the occasional replacement or installation job, but it's like try to get those maintenances cranked out, in the shoulder season, so that when it's summertime and you have the ability to pick and choose your job, then you can say, okay, this job is going to be more lucrative than this $79 tune up. We're going to make sure, like, this gets fall. This $12,000 replacement job is going to get that first time slot versus this $79 tune up, who their AC is working. They just need it tuned up. They can probably wait. And they would be understanding of
yeah,
it, I think, too. And that's the
yeah,
thing is, like, I think as leaders and organizations, like, it's hard because, like, I can see both sides of this, because, like, at one point I wasn't a leader in an organization. I was an employee, and I had leaders that were what we called a yes man. It was like, yeah, we can do that. Yeah, we can absolutely do that. And then it was like, okay, a person that's actually doing the work, you have to go now get burnt out doing it, versus saying, just being honest with the customer. Hey, we're pretty busy right now. It might be Wednesday morning or it might be Friday before we can get out to do this maintenance. Is everything working okay in the meantime? If not, can we get you like a window unit, or can we just get you something to hold you over until that time comes? Because, like you said, with the labor shortage, with technicians being
yeah.
harder and harder to find now, like, that burnout is going to lead to them leaving, and then you're going to be super screwed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you make a good point about kind of setting those expectations with customers too. They don't know what they don't know. And I was at a strategic partner training a couple weeks ago, and they said that 54% of people's worry comes from not knowing what to expect or what they're walking into. And I think when customers are in those scenarios, like you said, like, no one likes to sit in a hot house. So if my HVAC's broken and it's 110 degrees and I suddenly book this appointment and I have no idea when the technician's going to be here, when that technician is going to actually be able to fix my issue. You could come in, but can you fix it same day? Can you not? When those expectations aren't set, it puts a lot of that pressure back on your customer, which in those moments, they're reaching out to you guys to save the day. They're reaching out to that contractor because their stuff's broken and they can't fix it. So I think
Mhm.
there's a lot of power in internal teams being able to communicate that to customers and setting that expectation of how that experience is going to go from the second they pick up that phone to the second that that technician steps foot in their home. And when you burn down your technicians, like you said, that's going to lead to them leaving. And I know you and I talked a lot about, especially in this season, like technicians are paying attention to that. That's when they could get scooped up. So you really do have to focus on your people as much as you are focusing on those customers. And if that CSR is burnt out and that CSR has been working 10, 12-hour days and hasn't had a break for a week, I'm going to make a general assumption that when they pick up that phone, it may not be the most polite tone, or it may be a little bit more stress, and our customers can feel that. And so I think a lot of it, we talk about things we can do to set them up to prepare, but it's also checking in on them and just, getting that pulse check of how they're doing, what they need, where there's areas that contractors can offer a little bit more support in a way that's practical and something that's feasible nonetheless, in terms of the resources they have. But just making sure that from start to finish, that's a great interaction for your customers, but everybody that your customer interacts with along the way feels that they're taken care of, so that your customers in return also feel that when they're in those interactions with them.
Yeah. So can you expand on, like, I guess, just some different ways to prepare CSRs and dispatch for the busy season? Because, I think CSRs are, they're not as technically in demand as a technician, but they're still, like, they're the front line of your business, and they're the ones that have to answer to the angry customer when they call in. They're the ones that have to put the smile on their face every single day and call the customers and answer the phone calls. So what are some strategies that you've seen that work for training CSRs for the busy season?
Yeah. I mean, first and foremost, I would say things like schedule engine will obviously take some of that pressure off. So there's not necessarily fewer calls coming through, but there's fewer calls that they're having to facilitate. So there's those other avenues that are helping them get to their end goal. So we talk about, everybody knowing the goal, everybody knowing what that objective is when they walk in. And if they have a certain number of calls they're supposed to take or a certain number of calls they're supposed to book, help them get there in a way that doesn't make them feel like them on the phone is the only way to do so. So enable those tools kind of in the background that are only going to help them do their job better versus inhibit them or create roadblocks. I would also say kind of creating that plan of knowing how to prioritize those calls that are coming through. So instead of saying, hey, we're just going to book every call that comes through because we want a full board, create kind of those high value and maybe lower level value, not lower value, but jobs that can maybe be pushed out 24 to 48 hours. Like you mentioned, if it's a maintenance, hey, great, we're happy to take care of you. But instead of plopping them in at that 2:00 time slot the next day, maybe bump them out to the 4:00. Or if you can't get them same day or there's some slots there, save those for those high ticket, those higher value jobs that are going to come in. Because at the end of the day, that's what's going to allow each contractor to maximize that board. And it's also going to allow the CSRs to have to do less of that back work. I'm sure if a technician came in and said, hey, why am I running this no AC job that's 10 years old at 5:00 at night when I'm running a maintenance at 2 p.m., give me that time and swap that around or bump that maintenance there. So understanding sort of what jobs that are coming in maybe should be qualified and what could maybe be bumped out a day or two and offer a little bit more leeway than those kind of high value, high ticket items there, and make sure everybody's on the same page so that everybody's booking the same types of jobs. Everybody's prioritizing the same jobs and customers based on what that contractor wants to do. I think that's really important because it allows them all to operate on the same page. So it's not inconsistent day to day. Your technicians know what to expect. They have a sense of what's going to be on the board when they walk into that schedule every day. And then I guess I would say first and foremost, like those check-ins, they're picking up the phones all day, every day. Make sure they have that time to step away for that lunch break. Make sure they have that time to say, hey, I can pick up this phone call, but after this, I have to take a quick break. We're going to push some of the phones over, which again kind of ties into some of those back-end resources and other areas of support that contractors can offer. So helping just provide them with those tools to do so and allow them, like you said, they're humans, they're that front line. So allowing for a little bit of that human capability to come in. And although we're all busy, we know we don't want to miss out on a phone call. So how can we make sure that if that CSR can't pick up that phone or those phone lines are tied up, any other avenue our customer takes, we'll still have that same experience.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you're saying, like, the contractors out there listening to this right now, you can still take all of these calls and run them. But I think, what we're trying to say is, like, don't try booking them all in the same day, like them all in every single day just to fill the board up and get that money, because your technicians are going to get burnt out. Your CSRs are going to get burnt out. And that burnout is going to get passed on to someone. It's either going to get passed on to your customer or passed on to someone else in the team, which is going to lead to internal issues. So yeah, so having a plan for that, like I think that's literally like if I ran a business or something like that, I would literally have this plastered on the wall. Like, can this wait 24 hours? And that would just be the question on the wall. Could this wait
Yeah.
24 hours? And yeah,
Yeah.
you don't ask the homeowner that, but if you
Mhm.
wear a smile on your face when you're talking to them, they call in and they're just like,
Mhm.
oh, I wanted to just get my system, maintained because it's June 1 and it's hot out. Great. Hey, I agree. The warm
You and
weather is coming
everybody
in
else.
soon. Yeah, if you're like first, like agree with them,
Yeah.
be like, oh, hey, I'm so glad you called. You are smart to get this in now before it breaks down. Would it be
Mhm.
possible for us to do this Friday 9 a.m. instead of being busy right now? We got a full schedule. We can't get there until Friday. That's what I hear because I
Mhm.
listen to phone calls. I listen to some of our clients'
Yeah.
calls, and I hear that they'll say we can't get there till Friday. Oh, it's like you've projected onto the homeowner that like they're burdening you by calling instead of just
Mhm.
being like, great, you're so smart. Like I that is
You're
good
ahead
that
of
you're
the
calling to
curve.
get this. Yeah, it is good to get this taken care of before it breaks down.
Mhm.
How does Friday at
Yeah.
9:30 a.m. sound? Oh, that's
Mhm.
great. Yeah, perfect. They're booked. Your technicians can still go do what they're
Yeah.
dispatched to do for the day, and they're not stuck working till 10 p.m.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know a lot of that
So
even kind of ties sometimes into the after hours or, I know a lot of contractors are kind of toying with, do we run after hours? How much are we going to run on the weekends? And like you said, a lot of it is kind of not only preparing your team, but putting in those parameters of, okay, what are these questions we're asking? Because when that customer calls, like you said, it's their issue. They think they're the only ones that are calling when it's 100 degrees and no one else's systems are broken, which is really just not the case. And a lot of times, if you probably ask the customer who's calling maybe at 8, 9, 10 o'clock, they don't necessarily need you out there at 8, 10, 9 o'clock, especially if that technician can't even maybe get there till midnight or 1 o'clock once everything gets trickled down to them. They just want to know when you
mhm,
can be there. They want to know, hey, are you going to
yeah.
be here tomorrow at 8 a.m. or can you get here at 11 a.m.? And I think a lot of us kind of approach just as consumers the problems like that. We go to companies and service providers that allow us to have that interaction we want, when we want, how we want it. And we're looking for that end result of having our problem solved. And if you tell me you can solve it at 8 a.m. and I don't have to stay up till 2 a.m., that's fine. I just want to know you're coming. I want to know when this is going to get worked on. So I, as a customer, don't have to think about it anymore. So um,
Yeah.
I think even training those CSRs to kind of filter some of those out. And like you said, really lead with that expectation of, hey, like, here's when we can get to you and you're getting ahead of it versus, oh my gosh, now I'm in a scramble. I have to fit you in. We all feel that. And
Mhm.
it's never a good feeling. So
Yeah. So what are your thoughts around the 24/7 like emergency service? I'm starting to see more people move towards like a 8 to 8, uh, 6 to 5, things like that,
mhm.
6 to 6. What are your thoughts and what are you all seeing around 24 hours versus a 8 to 8 type thing?
Yeah, so I've definitely heard some of those schedules that you mentioned, 410s and stuff like that, or kind of giving the technicians the 4 days on, 3 days off, or kind of 5 and 2, but maybe position it where it's Tuesday to Saturday, so they have a Sunday, Monday off. We've seen things like that. In terms of kind of a
Mhm.
24/7, in the conversations I've been in over the last 2 or 3 years, I would say a lot of them have steered away towards that strictly, hey, we'll dispatch anything that comes through after hours, no matter what type of customer it is, who it is, what that job is. We want it on the board. We want to come to the rescue and we want to, sweep in and save the day for that customer. And a lot of that focus is because of that
Mhm.
labor shortage and realizing that these technicians are people and they have families too. And to ask them
Mhm.
to get up at 2 in the morning when they've been working since 10 a.m. and then be back in the office or on the road by 8 o'clock is a lot. And you have to focus on them because they are the core of your business. And so I see a lot of contractors toying with the idea of trying to either one, not offer it at all, or if they currently offer it, just scaling it back. So, hey, maybe that's something
Mhm.
we only offer to our maintenance customers. Maybe that is something that we have as a special, hey, you're opting in for your maintenance agreement with us, which also opts you in for it and gives you access to if there's any emergency scenarios, you'll get priority or we'll dispatch after hours if it's absolutely necessary. What we hear a lot of in the conversations is being more selective and allowing their CSRs to drive that conversation, like you mentioned. So, hey, completely acknowledge the situation you're in. We absolutely want to help you. Here's what we can do in the interim to, like you said, if it's in a plumbing scenario, great, turn off the main line. If it's, an AC, great, we can get to you earliest call tomorrow. We'll get you on the board. A CSR will call you right when we open in the morning to let you know when that technician will be there. So really kind of not just saying yes to say yes, because that trickles down the pipeline from the second that customer has that engagement on the phone to your technician having to run that call, and really kind of empowering those CSRs and those teams to say, okay, what is truly an emergency? Everything from a customer's mind is an emergency. It's happening in their house, but what truly is an emergency that needs to be dispatched? And if it is, how are we going to handle that? So maybe it gets passed to the service manager to, again, add another filter. Maybe it goes to that technician, so that technician can call the customer, walk them through maybe a temporary solution until the next day. I see a lot of contractors shying away from it, mainly because it takes a human element to run that job. And that human element is really, at the end of the day, especially when we're busy, it's the first thing that's going to fall off. And the quality of that and the I guess you could say prioritization of your team is something that should always come first as well, in addition to the customers. So I see less and less of it, I would say. It's easy if you don't offer it now, because then you can just say, hey, we don't do it, and you have that control. I would say that where the trickier part is when you offer it and now you're kind of trying to scale it back. It's, again, developing that plan of how are we going to do it, who are we going to offer it to, and what types of jobs are we going to escalate to make sure that not anybody who calls, regardless of the scenario, can just have a tech at their house at 2 a.m. because they want them to be.
Yeah. So would you recommend, like, if they're going to offer after hours service and dispatch, would you recommend them doing it for anyone or just for, maintenance agreement type customers?
Yeah. So what we see a lot of, and what we even kind of practice with a lot of our clients, is putting those buckets. So, hey, it's maintenance members, but it's maybe maintenance members and only when it's a no heat, no cool, and 2 other types of jobs. So truly this is actually an emergency. We'll run it. And a lot of it is in the case of, okay, if it's life or property at risk, that's when we'll run it. If this is, hey, your AC has been broken for 3 days and now you're just getting time to call me and you just want me out there now, absolutely not. It's been broken for a couple of days. You could have had 48 business hours to call me. Just because you want it fixed now does not mean I'm going to make my technician wake up and come run that job. So a lot of it is focusing on who that customer is, and then also those really kind of high value true emergency scenarios where it's not a matter of, hey, I'm just uncomfortable now and I don't want to be for the next 6 hours, but is their property or is their life at risk based on what's happening in that home? And is this customer, whether it's new or a maintenance customer, the person who is dealing with that? So a lot of it is focusing on those, 2 to 4 truly emergency scenarios. And then beyond that, deciding just which customers you want to offer it to, because, if you're booking all day, every day, and not that no contractor has an interest in getting new customers, but for bandwidth, sometimes there's a little bit of that scale back. So, it's all new customers are booked for the next day. Maintenance customers will be escalated, and it has to be one of these jobs. Otherwise, we're booking them for the next day too, because I'm not going to run my technicians into the ground running lower level jobs or jobs that truly can wait, 12 to 24 hours. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, if there was a contractor that wanted to, they wanted to offer the after hours support, but they didn't want to have CSRs necessarily on call, to have to answer the phone, and didn't want to like forward the phones to them. What are some ways that they could, still offer that call center service where they could have a human answer the phone without having to necessarily have someone at their house or in the office answering it?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do at Schedule Engine have a portion of our services that is an industry trained call center. So they're able to outsource, obviously, 2 different call centers. What those capabilities are differ by each. So you have some call centers out there that are just going to be, they're only going to have the capabilities to capture lead information from that customer and pass everything back to that CSR team. So whether it's something the CSRs get to the next day or someone's on call, there's still always usually that manual CSR or internal touch from that team member who's on call, or maybe is, just sitting there, which again, we're trying to remove. So those typically don't take any of that workload and that pressure off of those teams if you're really trying to give them a break. At Schedule Engine, what we're able to do is, in addition to just being that front line of defense and being that, happy CSR on the other end of the phone when your team can't be, we'll absolutely have that ability to capture lead information and pass it back to teams when it's not something call related. But the big difference there, and what takes a lot of that lift off of internal teams, is we have that ability to book jobs. So you have that customer that calls in, maybe they don't want it escalated that evening. They just want to know when you're going to be out there. We're actually able to book that job, push it
Mm-hmm.
into that contractor's FSM, whatever it is they're using. And their CSR could walk in, have that book job, and just choose that technician to assign it and run it the next day. In those cases of emergencies, again, we can be that front line, and we work with every contractor to set up sort of those buckets. So usually it's, if we're running after hours calls, here's our technician on call, here's the jobs we want escalated. If a customer call comes through that falls in that category, we push it to that technician, and they're able to do some deeper dives with the customer to actually get out to their home and kind of dispatch themselves as well. So in terms of taking teams out of it, the big perk with Schedule Engine is that we can book those jobs. So anybody who calls, and like I said, it's not an emergency, you still don't want to lose that lead. So how can we book them and tee it up for your CSRs to run with the next day? But if they want that support, and in the case of the call, it has to be ran, we want to make sure that we can run it as well. So we have all of those set up on the back end with our contractors to make sure that jobs that need to be pushed same day can be, but things that can wait and things that your CSRs would also book for the next day, or they're waiting for them when they walk in the next morning.
Yeah. Now, what are some common challenges that you all see contractors facing when it comes to an offsite call center?
Yeah, great question. So I would say the most common thing I hear is people do not want to give up that control. I think we all have it. We all want to be able to have every single conversation, know exactly how it's going to sound. And so there can always be that worry of, who is talking to my customer on the other end of the phone? What is that interaction like? Are they representing my brand in the way that our CSRs would? And that is up to our standards. So that's kind of the biggest worry and biggest concern I would say I hear a lot. The second is kind of that secondary piece I touched on with kind of leads versus bookings. So what are those capabilities? Is this something where whoever's picking up the phone is only going to be able to assist that customer to the extent of saying, hey, we can capture information, but someone will call you back in 24 hours. If that's the business model you want to run, great. But if you want your customers to be able to call and at the end of the day, at least get that end result, whether it's a booked appointment, a technician dispatched, at least feel like their need has been met and they've given their information to a credible source, we can build that out as well. So I would say a lot of it is, first and foremost, who is that person on the other end of the phone? And secondary, what are they doing for me? Are they going to capture leads? Are they able to book? If an emergency comes in, what are they able to do for me? And there's a lot of concern and conversation about what those capabilities are, knowing that they're just different for every contractor. Some are completely okay not wanting anybody else to dispatch and just take care of it when it comes in the next day. Some would prefer more robust capabilities so that there's less on their team's plate when they walk in the next day with it. So I would say people and capabilities are the two most conversations I find myself in day to day. So
yeah. For those of you listening, you just got to experience the sights and sounds, or just the sounds at least, of the lovely city of Chicago in the background.
Oh, did you hear that?
sirens
I
going
have
by.
blurred out on the
Yeah.
back. Uh-oh. Well, welcome to my city,
Yeah.
guys. So
Yeah, I've noticed whenever we record with folks from like big cities like that, there's always like sirens in the background. I love it.
yeah, I have like that, like the noise canceling stuff. So I was like, oh, you can probably only hear me, but apologies, guys.
No, it's great.
We're
Yeah.
in real
So
time
yeah,
here.
real time.
No
real life
editing, no
stuff.
buffers, none of it. So
Nope. Keeping it in. So yeah, a couple takeaways I've just kind of had, here in my notes for those of you who offer, or at least say you offer 24/7 emergency service. You either need to do it or don't do it. Like if you are going to say on your website and in your messaging 24/7 emergency service available or 24-hour service available, you better have a plan to actually do what you say you're going to do. Because what's going to happen is you're going to get a Google review that's going to be a 1-star review, and it's going to say something along the lines of, they don't actually offer 24-hour service. And those reviews last much longer than the summer. So that review is going to be there in the fall, in the winter, in the spring, depending on your ability to make the customer happy again to either remove it or change it. But it's just going to be a bad look. So if you say 24/7 service available, you better be able to back it up. So I guess my advice there would be, if you're not going to do 24/7 service, or you don't want to, just, for the sake of the culture, don't say it, and just be honest with your customers and tell them, put your hours on your website, 8 to 8, 6 to 6, whatever you want to do. But just be upfront with them about that, because getting no review because you didn't get the call is honestly better than getting that $79 DX fee and then a 1-star review, because then you didn't, now you have a bad review on your website, which is going to do more damage than good.
Yeah. Or specify, if it's part of a maintenance agreement, only let it be under that maintenance agreement. So people know that I do not have access to this unless I'm part of the comfort club, whatever that may be. Cause I know a lot of contractors, of course, they always want to know, and they want to get those customers on those plans. And not that it's something you can't do, but it at least is a little add-on. And within that, you still have the ability to kind of provide more context in terms of what that means. Once those customers are actually exploring those plans, we can always dive deeper into, what specifics they would have. But I definitely think that 24/7 sticker on it, sometimes I know myself, I see it, and I think I'm going to get any need met, any 24/7, 365. If I see it, I'm like, great, I'll call you, I'll web chat you, I'll be able to do it. And sometimes that's not the case.
So I'm sure that this might be a question that would be best asked if I was talking to like a staffing firm or like a recruiting type of company, but we'll just see, because I know you talk to a lot of contractors out there.
Yeah.
I see a lot of times where contractors try to staff up really quick for the summer, because, when they're slower in the spring and, towards the end of winter, they might not need 8 install crews and 16 service technicians and 7 plumbers. And so what we see is a lot of contractors scramble right about now to say, oh, we got to staff up. We need 4 installers. We need 4 service technicians. And so you kind of just piecemeal this motley crew together for the summer. And that could come with, a lot of, good things, because your capacity is greater, but it could also come with some blowback, because you're now putting together people who aren't necessarily in with your culture already, and they're not necessarily trained up to be the way that you need them to be. What are some ideas or suggestions you would give to a contractor in regards to preparing those technicians for the peak busy season?
Yeah. So you're right. I'm not part of a staffing or recruiting team, but I'll give it my best shot based on what I hear. So transparently, what we even hear a lot from our clients is having that plan and having solutions in place that are like schedule engine, or things that are taking some of that pressure off your teams. Really enable them, especially when you think about CSRs or some of that more, like you said, I don't say temporary staffing, but hey, we're just going to get somebody to pick up the phone. We're not going to train them. It's okay. They'll be here for 3 months. They haven't needed to do that, because their core team has solutions that set them up for success and that allow them to not have to need that extra human bandwidth in some of those scenarios, because their customers have another way to engage with essentially the internal office staff. Or like I said, if they're looking to book, now they have other avenues to use to do so. They don't only have to pick up the phone and call. And you as a contractor, if you don't have enough people behind that phone to pick up, and you have 4 people instead of 8, those people are going to sit on hold. Take some of that pressure off there. In terms of technicians, I would again kind of bring it back to that plan, making sure that even if they are somebody that I guess you could say, what word am I looking for here? If there's sort of that knee-jerk reaction to staff up because we're busy, we need more bodies, we need more people here, that technician is still a representation of your brand. So if they're going to be in that home with your customer, whether they plan to be here for 4 months or 6 months, doesn't necessarily mean, in my opinion and from what I hear, that there should be any less training pushed on them. There should be any less focus on their skills, how they're representing your brand, them embedding in your company culture. They should feel just as part of that core team as the core team does. Knowing that the labor shortage is pretty key. I would say that's, the hardest thing to find. So if you find them, you're in luck. And so you might as well treat them as you would somebody who you expect to be there for a long time, because you never know how it could end up. We don't want them poached from anywhere else. So in busy season, we know people I would say, get picked up left and right. So in my opinion, and from the technician side, it really is still focusing on making them feel as valued and as welcome as that core team is, and still investing in them just as you would invest in any other part of your business, because they're still that extension of your brand when they walk into that home. They're still that person your customer engages with, and that interaction, like you said, can lead to a lot of things. And the last thing you would want to do is feel like there was an opportunity to include more or educate more or kind of welcome them into the brand, and have it reflect poorly on the brand as a whole. So
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I feel like there's been a lot of good things said in this episode, and this time is
yeah,
kind of flown by. So, is there
always
any?
does.
Yeah, is there anything that you may feel that I've missed out on, or you were
Yeah.
hoping to talk about that I didn't ask?
No, I mean, you covered the gamut. I feel like everybody's trying to figure out how they can best prepare for busy season, which was why you're probably listening to this. And I think there's a lot of different ways we can do so, but it all really does come back to, like I said, that plan, and then knowing that everybody who is within that plan knows what it is that they're responsible for and what resources they have and what support they have from you as a contractor, because people are the hardest to replace right now, and they're that
Hmm.
extension of your brand. They're that first face that people see, and you don't get two first impressions. So you want to make sure that no matter who you are in line, whether you're the CSR, the technician, the dispatcher, um, each of those interactions, the customer feels like they're valued and they're welcomed, and they don't feel like a burden, because we all know that that's not a feeling we want. And it's something that I think nowadays, more as we focus on customer experience, it's really what's ingrained in customers' minds when they think about who it is that they're choosing to invest their time and their money and their resources into. So
Yeah, yeah. My grandma always said a first impression is a lasting impression. So,
it is. So you better make it good, right?
yeah, yeah. Better make it good, or grandma's gonna come after you.
She might, you know.
Speaking of first impressions, I'll go ahead and just share a funny story. And I'm not sure if I shared this the last time. I don't think I did. So the way I found out about Schedule Engine was in the way that I actually met Alyssa, who's the first person I met at Schedule. I had a client that was asking if I knew of any scheduling softwares for like the website so that they could have like technicians, or they could have customers schedule. And so I Googled like website schedulers for HVAC or something, and there was an ad that popped up. So I called Schedule Engine, and Alyssa answered the phone, and I was like, "These people are cool." I like just knew it off the bat, though, just like the way you answered the phone and how positive you were. I was like, "These people are awesome." So I here we are now. We're partnered with them, proudly partnered with Schedule Engine. They're a good group over there, and yeah, definitely recommend them. So if you are looking for the right tools to provide for your team to support your plan, I highly recommend looking at Schedule Engine. They might have a solution or two for you. So there's a shameless plug for you guys. So
We always have help. What I got is that I make really great first impressions, so I'm gonna pass that along.
yeah, yeah. Include that next time you have like your annual review.
Yeah, no. Hey, this is what Eric told me. I mean,
Yeah,
feelings
he said it
mutual. Service
live.
World Expo, come on.
Yeah, he said it live. I mean, you can't take it back now, you know.
It's on the
So
internet forever,
awesome.
you know. So
That's right.
hey, you know,
Well, Alyssa, I appreciate you taking some time out of
yeah.
your day to join me on the show. What's a good way for folks to contact you or learn more about Schedule Engine?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as always, you can go to our website, you can book a demo, you can reach out there. You can always reach out to me at alyssa@scheduleengine.com, and I am happy to have a conversation or help in any way that I can. Or you can pick up the phone and call. So I can attest that everybody on our team will be that happy, jolly voice on the other side. So we're here,
Awesome.
we're ready to help you guys. We're here to talk if you have any questions, or just want to even have a conversation and continue conversations like this one we're having on the podcast in the background. We're always here when you guys need us. So don't ever hesitate to reach out.
Awesome. Well, Alyssa, thank you again, and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, you too, Eric. Thanks so much for having me.
Mhm.